You know, the greatest strategic failure is believing a large purchase requires a large pitch, this massive, high-pressure sales effort aimed at closing a skeptical buyer. But what if that's completely backward? What if the entire sales battle is won long before the pitch even begins? Today, we're going to unpack the powerful strategic framework that makes this possible, the brand promise mechanism. We'll explore how one single, disciplined commitment becomes a company's most potent tool for building truly unbreakable loyalty.
This quote, it just cuts right to the heart of a huge misunderstanding in business. For decades, we were taught that to win big, you had to sell hard. Overwhelm the customer with features and benefits, and just close with this powerful argument they couldn't refuse. But that whole approach, it's built on a flawed idea. It assumes the battle is won in that final moment, and that the seller holds all the cards. In today's world, that's just not true anymore.
So, just imagine for a second, winning the war, not with some big frontal assault, but with a single strategic move that happens weeks or even months before the final decision is ever made. What if the real victory is secured not at the point of highest friction, but at the lowest? This is the core idea we're talking about. Earning a small, seemingly insignificant commitment that, because of how our brains are wired, makes that big final purchase feel like the only logical next step. This isn't just some thought experiment, it's a fundamental shift in strategy.
Now, the force behind this whole thing is a deep psychological principle called commitment bias. We are all wired with this powerful, often subconscious need to be consistent. Once we've said yes to something, no matter how small, our brain works overtime to line up our future actions with that first commitment. We just hate the feeling of being inconsistent. The smartest brands don't fight this. They build their entire strategy around it, creating a path of small, easy yeses that naturally lead to loyalty.
And let's be honest, this strategy has never been more important than it is right now. We live in an age of infinite choice. There's just so much noise. Most products and services are becoming commodities. They're basically indistinguishable from one another. This commoditization crisis has created this deep skepticism in customers. They've heard every pitch, they've seen every ad, and frankly, they're numb to it. The old model of a big, loud sales pitch, it doesn't just fall flat. It often backfires and makes people trust you less. We need a new model, one built not on persuasion, but on proof.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by dissecting that big pitch paradox. Then we'll get into the core of this strategy, the unbreakable promise trinity. We'll explore the psychology that makes it so darn powerful, walk through a simple test to apply it, and then wrap up with the single most important rule that holds this whole mechanism together.
At the very heart of this system is what we're calling the unbreakable promise trinity. Now, don't think of this as a marketing campaign. Think of it more like an operating system for the entire business. It's a mechanism with three interlocking parts that, when they work together, create this fortress of loyalty that's just incredibly difficult for anyone else to break through. Why? Because it's built on performance, not on perception.
So here are the three pillars, and trust me, their order is absolutely critical. First, you have the singular commitment. This is the brand's unshakable anchor in your customer's mind. Second, you have operational alignment. This is the internal engine that actually powers the delivery of that promise. And third, measurable delivery. This is the undeniable proof that builds real, earned trust over time. They aren't separate things, they're a tightly integrated system. The anchor is meaningless without the engine, and the engine is useless without the proof. So let's break each one down.
The singular commitment is the anchor. It has to be one thing. Not a list of features, but a single, non-negotiable guarantee. Just think of Domino's legendary promise: pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. It wasn't about having the best taste or the most toppings. It was a unique, concise guarantee focused on one thing that mattered: speed. This became the ultimate shortcut for the customer's brain. In a world full of pizza options, Domino's gave you a simple, verifiable reason to choose them.
Now this right here is the most critical distinction, and it's where 99% of companies completely fail. A promise cannot just be a clever tagline that the marketing department came up with. It has to be a ruthless internal operating procedure that dictates how the entire company behaves. If the promise is just a slogan, it's going to be exposed as a lie, and that destroys trust forever. But when it becomes the central nervous system of the organization, it becomes an unstoppable, authentic force. This is where the real work happens. This is the mandate for operational alignment. First, KPI alignment. This means every single department's main performance indicator is tied directly to that promise. If your promise is speed, engineering's top KPI becomes system latency. For Domino's, this meant everything, from the kitchen layout to the delivery routes, was obsessed with that 30-minute window.
Second, you have to eliminate conflict. Domino's actually sacrificed menu complexity to guarantee delivery speed. Any feature, any process, any good idea that gets in the way of the promise has to be ruthlessly cut. That discipline is absolutely non-negotiable.
And this brings us to the single most important metric in this entire system, the promise fulfillment rate, or PFR. This isn't some vanity metric. It's the ultimate measure of integrity for the whole organization. It's the simple, brutal percentage of times you actually deliver on your commitment. This number is the engine of trust. Every time you deliver, you reinforce the customer's belief, making it stronger. And that consistent proof, that's the most powerful marketing there is.
All right, so we've seen the what of the mechanism. Now let's dig into the why. Why is a single, simple promise so psychologically powerful? Well, it's because it taps into these deep patterns of human behavior. It doesn't try to change how people think, it just aligns with how we're already wired to make decisions, especially in a world that feels so complex.
This chart just illustrates the difference perfectly. On one side, you've got the old way, bombarding customers with competing claims. We're the fastest, the cheapest, and the highest quality. This creates a high cognitive load. It forces our brains to work way too hard. And you know what that leads to? Confusion and inaction. But then you have the promise way. It offers one single verifiable commitment. This creates a low cognitive load. It makes the choice feel effortless. It allows for instant categorization. Oh yeah, they're the fast one. And it builds durable credibility, not that fragile persuasion that shatters the first time something goes wrong.
So let's look at the psychological levers at work here. First, as we just saw, is cognitive load reduction. The single promise is a powerful mental shortcut. It lets people make a quick, intuitive choice that just feels right. Second is that consistency principle we talked about. By making one promise and then measurably keeping it over and over, a brand builds authentic credibility. And finally, the promise becomes a psychological anchor. It literally sets the standard. Once Domino's promised 30-minute delivery, every other pizza place was suddenly being judged against that same clock.
Okay, we've covered the theory and the psychology. Now let's get practical. How do you turn these ideas into action inside a real company? This isn't about wishful thinking. It's about a disciplined, repeatable process. This is where the strategy meets the spreadsheet, and it all starts with one crucial test.
It really boils down to 3 essential steps for implementation. First, you have to execute the singular commitment test to make sure your promise is actually strong enough to hold the weight of your entire brand. Second, you have to codify that promise into an operational filter that guides every single decision. And finally, you have to align all your internal metrics, all your incentives, to the delivery of that one promise. This is the first and most important hurdle. Your promise has to pass this simple yet brutal test. You have to ask your team, if we deliver only on this one thing, perfectly and consistently, is it so valuable that it justifies the entire price our customer pays? If the answer is no, your promise is too weak. It's just a feature, not an anchor. A true singular commitment is so powerful that even if everything else was just average, the customer would still feel like they got a great deal. Good service fails this test. Your package arrives tomorrow. That passes.
So once you have a promise that passes the test, you have to translate it from a vague idea into a concrete, non-negotiable standard. This is what we mean by codifying the operational filter. An abstract promise like exceptional service becomes a hard metric. All support tickets are answered in under 5 minutes. Ultimate reliability becomes 99.9% guaranteed uptime. Unbeatable speed becomes pizza delivered in under 30 minutes. These clear, unambiguous rules dictate everything. There is no gray area.
And here is the final crucial piece that ties it all together. You must mandate that the primary KPI for every single department is directly linked to that delivery metric. This is what forces real operational alignment. This is how you get your entire organization moving in the same direction, all in service of the customer. When an engineer's bonus, a marketer's budget, and a support agent's review are all tied to that promise fulfillment rate, the promise stops being just an idea and becomes the very heartbeat of the company.
So, as we bring this all to a close, let's just distill everything down to its single, most essential insight. The ultimate takeaway from the brand promise mechanism is the profound power of singular focus in a world that's always telling you to do more. It's about marrying the cold, hard logic of operational excellence with the deep human need for certainty and trust.
This one sentence says it all. In a world full of skepticism, trying to control the narrative with clever marketing is a losing battle. People don't trust what you say, they trust what you do consistently over time. And the only thing you have absolute control over is your ability to deliver on your promise. If you focus all your energy there, the narrative takes care of itself. Your delivery becomes your story, and it's a story that simply can't be faked.
So the crucial point is, this is what happens when you have that kind of discipline. By anchoring your entire company to one promise, you build a brand that is first, instantly trusted, because its promise is so clear and proven. Second, it's easily memorable in a sea of noise. Third, it becomes structurally durable against competition, because this level of operational alignment is just incredibly hard to copy. And finally, it creates an authentic, self-reinforcing loyalty that just gets stronger with every successful delivery.
And that right there is the ultimate goal. To stop pushing people through some synthetic sales funnel and start pulling them organically toward genuine value. And the way you do that is simple in concept, but incredibly difficult in execution. You make one promise. One singular, meaningful, measurable promise, and then you build your entire world around never, ever breaking it.